Welcome to the program, everyone. I am Trish Regan, the Trish Regan Show, and we got a lot to cover. Breaking right now, Trump is responding to Judge Merchan's refusal. He's got a new ruling out saying, you know what, I'm not going to budge. I'm going to stay lording over you. Well, Donald Trump has a few things to say about that. Plus, he's vowing revenge against the DOJ. He's suing the DOJ for $100 million. That's a lot of money. Jack Smith, watch out. You wonder why the mainstream media wants him to lose so badly that I guess a few people were willing to overlook what Kamala Harris's campaign was up to, editing headlines from the likes of the Associated Press to try and give her more positive coverage in the ad campaign. Wow, this is pretty wild. We're going to talk about that. Plus, the media coming to the realization that, you know what, they're just not the it thing girl anymore. Elon and Trump topping a billion views. Can you imagine that? On X. Pretty incredible. So incredible. Oh, and then we got to get into that CNN anchor who was the butt of a joke. Anyway, beginning today on the big story, which is Donald Trump responding to Judge Merchan's new ruling that, you know what, he's not going anywhere. So Judge Merchan has decided that he is going to stay put, presiding over this hush money case. Now, I think it's kind of curious that the judge himself gets to decide whether or not he's in or out of a case. I mean, don't you think that's a little bit peculiar, you guys? The reason why this is such an issue and the reason why he kept going back, this is his third time trying to get the judge off the case, is because the judge is seen as having some bias, just a little bit, right? Because of, well, his own political leanings. In fact, he contributed just a teeny bit of money, like $10 or something, to some left-wing organization that was trying to take down Trump in the last campaign. And you see, he's got a daughter who makes her living off of the Democrats raising money from none other than these kinds of lawsuits. So every time Trump's back in court, what does she do? She sends an email, tries to collect a little ka-ching for the Democrat Party, and then she pockets part of that. She has a firm that does this. So it's a little unseemly. I mean, I'm just saying, you know, if they want to go after the justice's, Supreme Court justice's wife for her flag choice, then might they not care a little bit about Judge Merchan having some real apparent biases? I mean, his daughter is making her living off of the very case that he's presiding over. The easy thing to do in that case is to say, you know what, I'm not going to take this. I'm going to defer this to somebody else. But it sounds like he's got a little bit of a vendetta. I mean, just a little bit, right? I mean, he really does not seem to like Donald Trump one single bit. And so this is kind of a big story today. Donald Trump is calling this fascism. He is saying that this is just too much. In other words, let me get to his quote here. Judge Merchan just ruled that I, the Republican candidate for president and leading in the polls, am still under a gag order concerning very important things which must be brought to light. I am not allowed to answer reporters' questions. Can you believe this? The New York courts refuse to act. This is happening right before the voting begins on September 6th. Suppression and manipulation of the vote, voter interference. This is the real fascist stuff, the old Soviet Union, exclamation point. So much to say, and I'm not allowed to say it, must get U.S. Supreme Court involved. New York is trying to steal the election. So this is tricky stuff, right? You're not supposed to say these things. I mean, he's right. He's not supposed to say these things. So the question then becomes, forgive me, Drew's jumping in and what's that? What's that, buddy? I heard you say something. Just adjusting some cameras, so I'm gonna see that on the back end, guys. But anyway, I think that Donald Trump, you know, on the one hand, he hasn't necessarily, you could say, have always done himself favors, right? Like, in complete fairness, you know, I'm very objective. I am always objective, and you'll always hear both sides. So sometimes he goes for the jugular at maybe an inopportune time. Okay, so that's that. But by the same token, you think the guy deserves what's just gone down? I mean, consider how New York has tried to go after him. New York has tried to bankrupt him. New York is trying to stop him from speaking. He can't speak about all the things that have been alleged about him because Judge Merchan has a gag order. I mean, that seems like it's going a little bit too far. And so when you have these comparisons to the Soviet Union, I mean, I don't think it's that far off, frankly. Heck, you got the European Union threatening to sue X and Elon Musk because he dared to broadcast an interview, a 2-hour conversation with the former president of the United States. I mean, this is really wacky stuff. So say what you want about Donald Trump. Say all you want about him, but the reality is this, guys. They've gone too far in their efforts to stop and stifle him. Increasingly, he might be there before the Supreme Court in the United States of America. He might be presenting a case. He's very close, still in the polls right now. We're going to have more to say on that in just a little bit. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, make sure you share, make sure you comment. Again, live program. So great to have all you here and to see so many familiar faces. It's an important time to stay connected. I'll say that. Turning to some more breaking news, Donald Trump seeking revenge, ladies and gentlemen. He wants to make sure that the Department of Justice pays for what it did to him regarding Mar-a-Lago. Remember the big raid? He's suing for $100 million. Jack Smith might feel a little bit of pain on this one. Jack Smith not really getting where he wanted to go. And Donald Trump, in the meantime, saying that this is positively, absolutely unconstitutional. So let's go to the depth of this case. You see the headline there in Business Insider, Fox News also having it. Credit to Fox News, actually. They got their hands on the memo, which claimed tortious conduct by the United States against President Trump. So Trump's legal team is now, per this report, intending to sue the Justice Department for its conduct in the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago back in August of 2022 amid a federal investigation into his alleged improper retention of classified records. Of course, he's made the point that he was president at the time. Therefore, he unclassified them. The attorney, David Epstein, has filed the notice to sue the Justice Department. The Justice Department has 180 days, according to Fox, from the date of receipt to respond to the notice and to come to some kind of resolution here. If no resolution is made, then guess what? Trump's case is going to move forward in the court of the Southern District of Florida. Now, what's interesting about this, and I'm going to continue reading from this, is the Southern District of Florida. That was Aileen Cannon, remember? Who said that Jack Smith didn't have a case. Jack Smith didn't have a case because Jack Smith was never authorized by Congress to even begin the investigation. Quote, what President Trump is doing here is not just standing up for himself. He is standing up for all Americans who believe in the rule of law and believe that you should hold the government accountable when it wrongs you. This is according to the Trump attorney who told this to Fox Business. Epstein's filing, the Trump attorney, states that the tortious acts against the president are rooted in intrusion, I should say, upon selection, malicious prosecution, and abusive process resulting from that raid in Palm Beach, Florida. Whew. Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot there to unpack. And the left is growing incredibly nervous right now that if Donald Trump were to win, that he's going to unpack it all. Here's what I would say, regardless of whether he wins or not, and I hope he does, because I think this is a really critical election. There's a lot at stake, from our freedom of speech to the health of our economy. I think regardless of whether he wins or not, it's critical to see these cases forward. In other words, they can't go after people without real reason. I mean, if you've got a complete malicious intent, you're trying to prevent him from campaigning again, and you figure if you get him on this, that, and the other, that'll be okay. And then you have Jack Smith moving forward, and you've never even gotten the proper authorization from Congress. These are problematic things, ladies and gentlemen. In other words, we have a constitution for a reason. And I realize that the left would love to rewrite the whole thing. They've told us that many times, right? Because it's outdated. Oh, those founding fathers, they were so bad anyway, right? We don't want anything to do with them. As a result of all that, it is so critical that we use every legal path. And I mean that legal. Let me be specific and clear about that, okay? Because the left is trying to make this into something it's not. There are legal means by which you can pursue justice. And those need to be pursued. And if it means taking it all the way to the Supreme Court, gosh almighty, that's where you go. to the Supreme Court of the United States of America. It is so critical for the left that they win this right now because they don't want all this discovered, right? They don't want everything out in the open. They don't want to be held accountable for all that has transpired. I mean, they've just worked themselves up into a frenzy so much now that they're willing to do some strange things to try and get elected. I keep looking at these polls and saying to myself, how the heck did Kamala Harris go from being down in the polls back on June 28th? I think we have a national poll we can show you from the New York Times. This is June 28th, 2024, ladies and gentlemen. It was Trump 24, Harris 43. Take a look at that, right? And then what do you know? A few weeks later, miraculously, if we look at the new poll, she's climbed 48 to 47. So now they're like neck and neck. I mean, how did she gain that much just in that quick amount of time? Makes you wonder. Well, apparently, she's willing to do some things that most people would not actually do. And I don't mean the Willie Brown stuff. Oh, okay. No, I mean her campaign has taken out ads, and these ads have inflated certain headlines, rewritten certain headlines from the press to make them seem more positive on Kamala Harris. In fact, Axios had this story. Take a look at the headline here. There we go. Oh, I think we got a headline too. I mean, they've been editing news, ladies and gentlemen. They've been editing news and then taking these headlines, redoing them, I guess, borrowing the logos of these different things, and then putting them out as actual headlines. Of course, they're sponsored. And by the way, there's tons of, labeling, or not tons, I should say. There's a bit of labeling on there, but you'd have to be kind of sophisticated. Like, I know that it's sponsored because, I'm looking for that stuff, but not everybody else is. Let's take a look at what the folks on Fox News had to say about this just this morning. They actually presented pretty well with the headlines. There's some of them from Axios. Harris campaign ads rewrite news headlines. My goodness gracious. All right. Who's the fake news now? Kamala. Watch Fox.
There's an interesting story out there that apparently Harris's campaign is allegedly rewriting headlines to make Harris look better. And here's
from actual stories. Now,
a lot of people don't realize that that's going on.
All right, so let's take a look at the big board right now. So before Untouched, this is where the article read. There's the cover. The impact of Biden's economic agenda. I'll start on that side. Harris will carry Biden's economic record into the election. After manipulation.
Which no one wants. No one wants her to carry Biden's economic record into this election. So look what they did after.
No, from their side, from their perspective. So VP Harris, economic vision, lower costs and higher wages. And even though it says it above, it's sponsored, that's an inaccurate.
The yellow.
And it's
because they're taking
deceitful.
the logo of the publication and making it seem like that's the headline. They did it again in Reuters. This is how it originally was. Impact of Biden's economic. What are we doing?
Right there. Go to this.
All right,
one.
we're going to go to North Dakota.
Go to that last one, the one on the far right.
Wall selected as Kamala Harris VP pick for 2024 election after Harris picks Tim Walz. 250 Minnesota families win. That was never in the headline before, but they made it that way.
So then in the next one, you can see what the original article said. The impact of Biden's economic agenda may be felt long after his presidency.
Okay.
So then they changed it to say at the bottom, inflation is down. Under the Biden-Harris administration, the U.S. is winning an inflation fight.
Right. So Google says that the Trump camp is not running these kinds of sponsored advertising, but other campaigns have done it in the past. Facebook actually stopped doing this because they felt it was disinformation. Because when you look at that stuff, and what Google says is, see, it says right at the top, sponsored. You should know this is sponsored content from the campaign. But the average person, they don't read the sponsored thing. They just look for the headline. It's like, oh, inflation is down. Oh, Harris picks Tim Walz. And so it is deceptive. And so, for instance, some of the news outfits are saying, what we're going to do is we're going to contact Google because we don't like this.
Yeah, but why are they contacting Google? Go to the campaign and say you're This is misinformation from you, campaign. This is not our headline. We're asking you to cease and desist it. You're putting our logo at the top of it as if we said it. That's wrong.
Right.
This is another example of they'll do and say
If Trump
anything
would
to
have did
win.
it, they would have did it to him.
Yeah, we reached out to the Harris campaign, find out what they were up to get an official statement. They did not give it to us yet.
Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I mean, this is unbelievable, guys. Just unbelievable. Let's go to the Harris statement. Wow, my gosh. Can we see what she had to say, Drew, in the Axios? In the Axios story. If we go back to Axios, guys, let's see. No, not that one. Let's go to the next one. You can see in the body of the text here, Axios talking about just exactly how and why this went down. So they're saying confirmatively here that the Harris campaign has been editing news headlines and descriptions within Google search ads that make it appear as if Guardian, Reuters, CBS News, and other major publishers are on her side. Well, I mean, they are on her side. She just wants to make sure they're like extra on her side, right? Why this matters, they say, quote, it is a common practice in the commercial advertising world that doesn't violate Google's policies, but the ads mimic real news results from search closely enough that they have caught news outlets off guard, right? They're kind of borrowing the look and feel and logo of other things. According to the Ad Transparency Center from Google, the Trump campaign is not running these types of ads. Can you imagine if he was, what they would do? No, it's Kamala who's running all these kinds of ads. Interesting, right? The ads say that they are sponsored, but it's not immediately clear in the text that is actually accompanying real news links, whether it's written by the campaigns rather than the publication itself. So you see, they have to fake it till they make it. I guess that's the idea. Kamala's going to just give you good headlines all day long to pretend things are actually a whole lot better than they are. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen, we know the truth. We know inflation's bad. In fact, we just got new numbers today. And while it is the lowest since March 2021, remember, it was climbing. And it still climbed another 2.9%. Thank you very much. So, okay, you can tell me all day long, like it's down. It's at March 2021 levels, but I'm just gonna remind you that it did still go up 2.9%. And guess what? I know it's the first time below 3%, but every time it goes up 3%, that's on top of the 3% from the month before, and the month before, and the month before. And at one point, we were up like 9% and change. Keep in mind, when Donald Trump left office, we were looking at 1.7% inflation. So Kamala, you know what? I'm sorry. That's a little bit on you. You can try and create all the headlines you want, but it's a little bit on you. Quick word from a sponsor. Hey everyone, I'm Trish Regan, and so happy to be coming to you live all week long from the stunning island of Ireland. Just incredible. You know, when I was a little kid and we'd visit here, my mom would say, if you're lucky enough, you might actually get a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow, because that's where the leprechauns leave it. So we looked, we didn't find any, but I consider it probably having been good advice, because as I got older, I learned that gold is pretty valuable. It's valuable in terms of diversification. I encourage you to take a look at it. And when you do, call our friends, our wonderful sponsors over at American Hartford Gold. You can go to trishlovesgold.com, Trish Loves Gold. And, wow, it's windy here. You can text 65532, my name, Trish, to 65532 for your chance to get up to $15,000 in free silver, ladies and gentlemen. Just a terrific offer. Well, I'm no longer in Ireland, but we were there the entire week, and it was a fantastically good time. And no, I didn't find any leprechauns with pots of gold. But you know what? I've been investing in gold for the last however many years. So there you go. Anyway, I want to turn to another big story right now. Oh, legacy media. Take this, guys. Elon Trump. Oops. Was that Freudian? Elon Musk and Donald Trump just topped 1 billion views. According to Elon Musk, he tweeted this one out today. Combined views of our conversation with @real Donald Trump and subsequent discussions by other accounts now around 1 billion. I mean, that's just amazing. Mainstream media is not too happy. Here's a look at the demos. I'll tell you, they're really not happy, because guess what? This is the coveted demo. Look at that, 25 to 34 years old. 70% of the viewership. 25 to 34 years old. So the majority of viewers were right in that sweet spot, that Kamala Harris so desperately craves and wants. That's why she's allegedly paying for positive press over on TikTok, which apparently is quite happy to give it to her. China and all. Anyway, she's trying to get that 25 to 34-year-old crowd. And guess what? They sat down and they listened to part of that conversation with Donald Trump on none other than X. So this is really scary stuff for the media, the mainstream media that's dealing with all the changes in the media industry. It feels very threatened, of course, by the likes of X and YouTube and even Facebook. In other words, there's a new way to talk to you guys. I mean, I'm doing it right here, right now, live. And it's sort of surreal. I say this all the time, like, I can't believe how quickly the industry is changing and how much I welcome this and value this, because we can have a direct connection in ways that we just never could before, right? You know, there was the prompter, there was management overlooking your scripts, et cetera, et cetera. Please make sure you subscribe, like, share, all that good stuff. I mean, this is a very different animal, but it's an authentic one. And I think this is really how people are getting the truth. But it's not perfect. It's not easy, because you know what? The truth is not always that apparent. You got one side saying this, another side saying that. At some point, you got to actually get to the bottom of things. We didn't get to the bottom of things in 2020, right? We were spun a whole bunch of lies by the likes of, well, the deep state that was heavily involved in Twitter at the time. I mean, it's part of the reason why Elon Musk bought it. So you had the 51X spooks saying, oh, nothing to see here. Remember about Hunter Biden's laptop? We have more headlines coming to you on that momentarily, because he's in more trouble. But it turns out that the New York Post reporting was correct, that laptop was real. It was not misinformation fed to you by the likes of the Russians and Rudy Giuliani, as ex-CIA folks were trying to lead you to believe, including not only ex-CIA folks, but actually the guy who's now our Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. And he's the one that went to the deputy director of the CIA, Mike Morrell, and said, hey, buddy, can you put this together? And they got 51 of them to sign this letter. And so I think we've been there, done that. And then when you learn that Kamala's campaign is trying to recreate headlines as ads and borrow the likes of all these news organizations and their reputations and try and insinuate something that's actually not true in order to paint her in a more favorable light, what you got to say is, you know what, the onus is on Americans to actually do a little bit more due diligence themselves, to come to places like the Trish Regan show, where you are going to get the truth, and we're going to cut through all those layers, because there's a lot of layers. And, you know, people, I get it. Like, you know, you're busy. You're not a journalist. You're not going to sit there and say, oh, wait a second, is this a sponsored link? Or is this a real story? So she's counting on that. She's preying upon that naivete. And the scary thing is, she was able, Democrat Party certainly was able to do it before. Can they really do it again? They've just been called out. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? It turns out that laptop, well, we know it was not fake, but things are even worse than we thought. Breaking today, new records prove that Hunter Biden was out there begging the State Department for help for that company that he represented, Burisma, the now defunct energy company, natural gas company, while his dad was head of Ukraine policy as Vice President of the United States of America. How do you like that? And this is exactly what we were pointing to, right? So the New York Times, finally, they come out with this news telling us that Hunter Biden sought State Department help for the Ukrainian company. After President Biden, quote, dropped his re-election bid, his administration released records showing that while he was vice president, his son solicited U.S. government assistance. Now, this is kind of important, right? Because he lied to us and lied to us and lied to us some more, as did the entire Democrat establishment. So they had these records. They knew this was there, and they didn't release them until now. They didn't release them until now because, you see, well, they didn't want to. They were trying to get him re-elected. Let me quote from the article. Hunter Biden sought assistance from the U.S. government for a potentially lucrative energy project in Italy while his father was vice president. The records, which the Biden administration has withheld for years, indicate that Hunter Biden wrote at least one letter to the U.S. ambassador to Italy in 2016, seeking assistance for the Ukrainian gas company Burisma, where he was a board member. A board member to the tune of some 80 some odd $1,000 a month, which is absolutely unheard of. No one has a board gig like that. Let me just tell you, right? Like, I've been a business reporter my whole career. There are no board jobs that pay upwards of $600,000, I guess, unless you are the son of the vice president in charge of Ukraine policy. That's your ticket. That's your ticket. And he took it. Embassy officials appear to have been uneasy with the request from the son of the sitting vice president on behalf of a foreign company. I would think, quote, "I want to be careful about promising too much," wrote a Commerce Department official based in the U.S. Embassy in Rome, who was tasked, lucky person, with responding to this. Quote, "This is a Ukrainian company, and purely to protect ourselves, USG should not be actively advocating with the government of Italy without the company going through the DOC Advocacy Center." And so they're talking about basically, U.S. government and Department of Commerce program, DOC, that supports American companies that seek business with foreign governments. I mean, wow. According to Hunter Biden's lawyer, his client, quote, asked various people, including the U.S. ambassador to Italy at the time, John R. Phillips, whether they could arrange an introduction between Burisma and the president of the Tuscany region of Italy, where Burisma was pursuing a geothermal project. Quote, "No meeting occurred, no project materialized, no request for anything in the U.S. was ever sought, and only an introduction in Italy was requested." Huh. So then why were they holding back on this? Why did they not want to release this? A White House spokesperson said that the president was not aware when he was vice president that his son was reaching out to the U.S. Embassy in Italy on behalf of Burisma. Goodness gracious. Here's the problem. Hunter Biden never registered as a foreign agent. He's out there working as a lobbyist, trying to get the U.S. to kind of help or sanction something for another company in Ukraine to do something in Italy. Now, granted, they're going to say, well, it wasn't in the U.S. I don't care. This is how Hunter's making his living, you see, because he gets somebody from the U.S. to maybe write a letter or arrange an introduction, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this is why people have to register as foreign agents. Kellyanne Conway just did, incidentally, right? Because she's doing some work on behalf of Ukraine. That's the right thing to do. It's the proper thing to do. But apparently Hunter Biden, we know he doesn't believe in the right or proper thing to do. Just look at his family, for goodness sakes. I mean that. Just pretty despicable behavior on his part. So they never actually added that charge. Remember when he was charged with all the violations, et cetera? There was the tax issue and the gun issue. But why didn't they actually charge him with violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act, which requires people to disclose? If you're getting paid for something like this, that's what's called lobbying. And you actually have to report that. And he never did. And that's what's kind of bonkers. I mean, and it goes further. It wasn't just Ukraine, it was Romania as well. I mean, there was the China stuff. For goodness sakes, my head explodes just thinking about it. And somehow this was all A-okay because you know what? They were never going to release these records. Joe Biden was not going to allow this to be known, and the Democrats went along with it. So now finally, now that he's not running again, now we get to find out. Kamala, that's on you too. I mean, you are so much a part of this. And it's scary to think that they're going to continue to hide so much truth. I mean, we're at a critical time. I would say that, as a nation, we need to think about what the ramifications and consequences would be if Donald Trump doesn't win. Because that means you get Kamala with her fake headlines, the whole CIA apparatus basically willing to do whatever's necessary to continue to get their people in various spots that they want. I mean, I'm thinking again about the laptop and the 51X spooks, et cetera. That tells you a lot, guys. It tells you a lot. And so what happens when we go down this path? I mean, already we've seen this tremendous stifling, if you would, of freedom of speech, and they're just happy to do it. Did you see how distressed, how upset these reporters were at the idea that X might get a shot of having a 2-hour conversation with the former president of the United States, who happens to be at the top of the GOP ticket? Oh my gosh, there was like bedlam in the White House press area the other day because, well, this one reporter put it all out there. And I don't know how this guy calls himself a journalist. I'll just say, I've played you this clip before. I got to play it again because it's symptomatic of everyone in the media right now. Let's cue this one up, Drew.
Elon Musk is slated to interview Donald Trump tonight on X. I don't know if the president is going to tune in. Feel free to say if he is or not. But I think that misinformation on Twitter is not just a campaign issue. It's a America issue. What role does the White House or the president have in sort of stopping that, or stopping the spread of that, or sort of intervening in that? Some of that was about campaign misinformation, but it's a wider thing, right?
Yeah, no, and you've heard us talk about this many times from here about the responsibilities that social media platforms have when it comes to misinformation, disinformation. Don't have anything to read out from here about specific ways that we're working on it, but we believe that they have the responsibility. These are private companies, so we're also mindful of that too. But look, it is. I think it is incredibly important to call that out as you're doing. I just don't have any specifics on what we have been doing internally as it relates to the interviews. Not something that I'm tracking, and I'm sure the president's not tracking it.
So think about that, guys. If we see a continuation of more of this, where does that leave us? In a pretty bad spot, I would say. A very bad spot. Our First Amendment under fire. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I really appreciate what the folks over at Project 2025 are trying to do. It's getting a bad rep for whatever reason because, well, that's what the media wants to do. And somehow now everybody's jumped on the bandwagon to attack these guys. This is put together by the folks over at the Heritage Foundation, and there's some really good ideas. They're really, really good policy ideas about how to take us forward in terms of our energy, in terms of our education for our kids, in terms of our economy, and trying to do what we can to encourage innovation while stifling the inflation that has been so rampant and has hurt so many people. And so I encourage you to go take a look at this right now to get the truth, right? You need to know the truth. 25truth.com, 25truth.com. That is the handle. Again, wonderful, smart group of people. And they've put together this wonderful body of legislation that could actually work really well to help get rid of some of the, well, I don't know, the deep state and a few other things along the way that have become so problematic here in the United States of America now and really do threaten our foundation of who we are as a country. So I encourage you, go right now, go check them out, 25truth.com. There's a lot of good there. There's a lot of good no matter what people are trying to tell you. Remember that. And we do have a lot of inflation. I mean, you saw the headline today is CPI. I get it. Okay, it's down from March 2021. But again, this stuff is cumulative and that matters. So if you're trying to think about diversification in your portfolio, you should. And I would encourage you to take a look at gold. One of our great sponsors here on the Trish Regan Show is American Hartford Gold. You can go to trishlovesgold.com right now, trishlovesgold.com today to learn more information. And by the way, here's the good part. They're offering up to $15,000 in free silver. Just text them. Text my name, Trish, Trish, to 65532, Trish to 65532, or call them at 1-844-495-1115 today to get up to $15,000 in free silver. Great group. We just had Max Baker, the CEO, on the program yesterday. I'm over the weekend going to release that interview so you can see a little bit more. He's got a very good understanding, obviously, as he would, of what is moving the gold markets right now. And it goes from everything to the central banks, right, that are trying to diversify themselves away from the U.S. and U.S. Treasuries. So they're buying gold. You got people that are looking at it saying, wait a second, okay, they got $35 trillion and counting in debt there in the United States of America. And so investors are buying gold. And then there's just sort of the basic issue of the constant inflation. I mean, I don't care if we get back to 2.5%, which I would love, by the way. 2% would be great. 2.5% I'd even take. The reality, though, is every single year, right? Inflation keeps moving up. So help diversify with gold today. I'll tell you, inflation is rough, and reality just hit over at MSNBC because one of the anchors was doing an interview with a woman who put it all out there. And this is important because I think the liberal media, you know, they live in their towers, they're in Manhattan or maybe in LA, but they don't understand what people are up against. They don't really get the whole increase of 30% in their grocery bills. You know, they get somebody else doing their shopping for them, I guess. Or maybe their salaries are going up 30% to keep pace. But for most Americans, that's not the case. And so it hurts. It hurts a lot. And this lady, kudos to her, she put it all out there and she knows exactly who to blame. Let's cue this tape.
How hard has inflation hit you?
It hit me hard. It's hitting me hard.
Who do you blame for it?
I blame the federal government at this point. If a working class mom who works as a paralegal cannot buy a $2 bell pepper because it's now $5, imagine a mother living on food stamps. Imagine a mother who's making minimum wage trying to feed children. They're killing us without killing us. If you understand that. They're killing us without telling us they're killing us. They're hurting people in ways that they can't help themselves. It's either feed my child or how about feed my children and I don't eat, but I have to go work.
So those are Pennsylvania voters there in Philadelphia that MSNBC took the time to speak to. I'm almost surprised that they aired that because it was crystal clear exactly who she's blaming. She's blaming the federal government. And that includes Biden and, yes, Kamala Harris, ladies and gentlemen. Kamala Harris, in the newest polls, still is seen as poor on the economy. Donald Trump, nationwide, 6 points, actually not just nationwide, he's actually more ahead nationwide. In the swing states, he's 6 points ahead of Kamala on the economy, but it makes all the sense in the world. Why? Oh, guess what? During the Trump administration years, median incomes actually grew. They rose the most they had in some 50 years. You're going to go all the way back to JFK to get any kind of income growth like this. And what happened now? Median incomes have deteriorated and they haven't kept up pace with inflation. It's why I keep saying, you know what? You got to invest. You got to think about your future. You got to do your part for you. I mean it. If you're going to go out to dinner, maybe don't spend as much when you go out to dinner. Take half the money you would have spent and put it into a really good place. And by a really good place, I do believe the equity market over time is exactly where you need to be. Exactly. You need to invest, guys. You just need to invest. It's one of the reasons why I created 76 Research, because I want to help you do this, right? I want to make sure that you have a path, you know where to go. Because over time, the beauty of compound interest. I mean, it's amazing, right? If you were to just, invest a few $1,000s a year, if you can do that, a few $100s a year, over time, that turns into real money. Real money, ladies and gentlemen. And so where do you invest? I know it's scary, the basic things. A lot of people start with an S&P 500 index fund, and I think that's good because you know what? It's low cost. We want low cost, right? Well, I found another way to give you low cost. I found my friend, Rob Horton's longtime mutual fund manager. We've known each other many, many years, and he was running billions of dollars on Wall Street. And I was like, you know what? I want to be able to help people somehow. And you're brilliant and you're a great stock picker. So what if we take what you were doing on Wall Street and we just bring it direct to the people? Forget about Wall Street. Forget about the fancy research, thousands of dollars that they spend. Let's just go straight to you guys. And so that's exactly what we did. We have 3 portfolios, a basic income builder, an income builder portfolio. Why? Because you need income when you are retired. You need to be able to live off of something if you ever have any hope of retiring. Basic income builder portfolio. Take a look at that, 10 to 15 stocks. By the way, it's beaten the market, which is just awesome. I'm so proud of this. So proud of this. You can also take a look at the American Resilience portfolio. You can also take a look at the inflation protection portfolio. They're all doing really well. American Resilience, a great portfolio for people who want growth, but maybe you don't want to be in NVIDIA because it's kind of volatile and it's way too high, right? Like it's a tough one to get in. You're in it, by the way, if you're in the S&P 500. So you want some exposure without necessarily going full stop in. These are the ideas for you, really and truly. I'm so proud of it. You know, if you actually get all of the portfolios, that's the way to go. You can be part of our Founders Club. So check out the Founders Club option, which actually gives you the 76 report as well. 76report.com or 76research.com. Do that today, right? Like if nothing else, just sign up and get the free stuff, okay? From me to you, because this stuff matters. Have you been watching CNN lately? Probably not. Good move. Good move. Well, I watch them now and then, and I show you a few clips here and there. And this just doesn't surprise me. This CNN anchor became effectively the butt of a joke when she went on to a comedy show. Liberal comedy guy, by the way, but he couldn't help himself. Or maybe the audience couldn't help themselves. Think about it. What do you think? Let's take a look. Stephen Colbert and Caitlin Collins.
Trump has kind of been thrown on his heels by this, and he's not really sure how to go after Vice President Harris. He knew his attack lines on President Biden. He really has struggled with how to go after someone who's 20 years younger than him, who is a different gender, a different race. It's kind of been this moment where he has not been able to coalesce around a single attack line.
I know you guys are objective over there, that you just report the news as it is. No, I know. CNN makes a. I know.
Was that supposed to be a laugh line?
I wasn't supposed to be, but I guess it is.
Indeed it is, right? It probably wasn't supposed to be a laugh line, but everybody gets it. Like they're clued in, which is why they're here. Reminder, subscribe, like, share. I mean, I think you're all looking for other sources of information because you want to be able to cut through all the BS, of which there is plenty. Plenty. I mean, they have a narrative. And by the way, they're paid for this, right? They are paid to stick to that narrative. And there's sponsorships and this, that, and the other. I mean, poor X, right? Disney won't give them the time of day. Dunkin' Donuts, apparently, is another one. Like, I mean, they've got a whole list of companies. We got to talk about Harley Davidson tomorrow, guys, because Harley Davidson is another one that is apparently just so woke. It's at risk of becoming the next Bud Light. Thank you very much. But this girl effectively became the butt of the joke, and it doesn't surprise me. I mean, the bias in the media is really, I mean, it's just so over the top, and I don't get it. Like, I don't understand why more people, it's happening, right? But, why more people don't just turn it off, like pull the cord, right? Come on over here. It's fun. We have a party. Leslie will take good care of you. Don too. Right? Mike as well. We have a good time over here on the Trish Regan channel. So make sure you subscribe, like, share, good stuff, of course. In fairness, we have to give CNN some credit sometimes, right? And I would say in this little clip, they deserve some. John Berman, the anchor, trying to ask Kamala Harris's person what she's up to today. Is Kamala Harris doing anything on the campaign front? Effectively, the answer is no, but watch how the woman tries to spin it.
What's on the vice president's schedule today?
Well, she's traveling and talking to voters and getting her message out there to the American people, something that she's been doing from the very start of this campaign and something that she certainly did when she was President Biden's running mate as vice president. But look, you just mentioned the speech she's going to be giving in
But that's right. I was asking about today, and I don't think she's got any campaign events on the schedule today, does she?
Well, she and Governor Walz have been traveling across the country. They hit nearly every battleground state last week. On the campaign trail, they raised $36 million within the first 24 hours.
So in other words, no. She's not doing a damn thing. She's got to rest, right? I mean, hey, it's the White House. I mean, look at all the resting that Joe Biden did. Heck, we just saw him last weekend on the beach, taking it easy. Kamala Harris has to get her beach time too, don't you think? I mean, that's actually pretty funny. Really, really funny. And I love how they cleverly try and say, well, she's raising money. No, she's resting because for whatever reason, they just won't let her go out anywhere. Kamala, much like Joe, think about the team running this thing. They won't allow her to go anywhere. She's not allowed to go out and speak. I mean, we kind of know why, right? The word salad, all the various faux pas that she commits along the way. We get it. But, people are getting fed up because, after all, you're running for the president of the United States of America, lady. You kind of have to tell us what your policies are. Donald Trump's got 20 he probably puts on his site. And then there's a lot of words to describe each one of them. But Kamala Harris, nothing, not a zip, zero. You know, you go to her website and there's nothing there. Well, Stephen Smith, the sports broadcaster, venturing into a little politics here, and he's had it. He's calling her out, as he rightly should. Well done, Stephen. Let's watch.
You running for the presidency of the United States of America. What you hiding for? United States. Not one single press conference, not one single one-on-one sit-down interview where somebody gets to question you about the questions that we ask.
You know, in a way, I wouldn't even trust the interview, because remember when Joe Biden did that interview with the Pennsylvania, Philadelphia radio reporter at the Black-owned radio station, and then it turned out the Biden team scripted all the questions. By the way, he still messed them up, but they had scripted all the questions, and then she admitted it, and you know, the next thing you know, she's fired. Poor lady. You don't, by the way, ever take scripted questions. Like, that's journalism 101, like a big, big, big no-no. But you wonder, like, they're not even giving her any scripted questions to go out and do a friendly podcast, say with Rachel Maddow. I mean, they're really keeping this woman under wraps, which I think is pretty concerning. So this got brought up on one of the news programs this morning, and I want you to hear what the Kamala Harris press person had to say. This is the campaign spokesperson responding to why it is she's not doing any interviews.
I don't want to, belabor this, but one interview before the end of the month. I mean, that's not a lot. I mean, can you commit to a press conference before the end of the month?
We will commit to directly engage with the voters that are actually going to decide this election. And that is going to be complete with rallies, with sit-down interviews, with press conferences, with all the digital assets that we have at our disposal. We are running a campaign that is built to communicate with the voters that are actually going to decide the pathway to 270 electoral votes. We are confident in the plan that we have in place, and we're going to execute on that plan.
I mean, why do interviews when you can use fake headlines and make them into ads, right? I mean, why even bother? Who needs to do an interview? You can just create your own little narrative over there in fiction land. Except, I'll tell you, the American people better not believe this. I am disturbed. I am disturbed by the success thus far that she has seen, this quote unquote momentum. I don't know is it's real or this is another mirage that they're trying to present us with. I mean, I know Donald Trump doesn't poll that well, which says something when he started really killing Biden in the race, unless that was just, I'm just thinking out loud here for a second. I mean, unless that was sort of contrived and deliberate. I mean, that was for sure a takedown, complete with David Axelrod and David Plouffe at the wheels there, talking in Jake Tapper's ear over on CNN. They took Biden out of the race. And so it's understandable the polls would actually show him cratering, because the media finally, I mean, not on MSNBC, but at least on CNN, was starting to show how bad Biden really was. Well, you know, Hannity, my former colleague over at Fox, had a good way of putting this on his program just last night. He's saying, like, look, this is an illusion. Like, she doesn't have any substance, ladies and gentlemen. She doesn't actually have any policy chops. She can't actually even string a darn sentence together, and you're going to elect her as president of the United States? I think not. Let's watch Andy.
But not long ago, Kamala Harris was persona non grata in the Democratic Party and among so-called journalists in the state-run Pravda media mob. This is a November 2022 headline. Let's take a look. Not exactly a conservative publication at Slate. Quote, if Biden runs again, he should pick a new VP. And this from New York Magazine a year later, 2023, quote, the case for Biden to drop Kamala Harris. Here's another headline, Politico, quote, columnists call for Biden to drop Harris and pick a new running mate. Kamala was routinely mocked on both sides of the aisle and in the media for her embarrassing word salads about the passage of time, etc. And anyway, her poll numbers were consistently at or near record lows. I expect they will be again. Kamala's own staff reportedly hated her, ridiculed the vice president's work ethic and character, and her track record as border czar and on inflation and Afghanistan is devastating.
Oh, wow. Right? You know, look, I remember those stories. I remember all of those stories. They were so negative on Kamala Harris. I actually defended the woman like years ago when she was running, before she did that really unceremonious moment where she tried to take down Joe Biden as racist. Remember that? That was really kind of ugly. And that actually spelled the end of her political career at that point in time. But apparently she had friends in high places, shall we say, okay? Including Barack Obama, who made a phone call to Joe Biden. Joe Biden's still sore over it. You know what? He should have gone with his instinct. He should have not trusted her. Jill didn't. Dr. Jill had no interest in bringing Kamala Harris in as vice president. And yet they did it anyway, I guess because they needed the support of Barack Obama, ladies and gentlemen. And now look where we are. Look where we are. Okay, so she was persona non grata until they needed to make her into something. And that's why you're looking at polls that I don't think are entirely transparent right now. I think we've got to watch this honeymoon thing phase succeed. And I think Americans need to be realistic, be smart. If she's not going to tell you what her policy is, be smart about it. I mean, the few things that we do know, she apparently thinks that we need a lesser population. We need, control of, you don't want so many children because it's better for the environment this way. I mean, frightening stuff. She has a lot of ideas about how we can tax more people. So if you make more than 100 grand, good luck. You know what? Kamala wants to take some of your money and redistribute that wealth because she's really left. I mean, she's really, really left. And then, of course, there's the media thing where none of it matters because she's just willing to actually create ads, her campaign team anyway, where they're creating fake headlines and trying to pretend like it's CBS News or Reuters or, as though those aren't positive enough. So it's a challenging time. I'm glad you're here for it. I'll be right back tomorrow. We are on the front lines of history here. I am here with you every single day through all of it, vacation or no vacation. Trish Regan is here with the Trish Regan Show. Make sure you subscribe, like, share, and I'll see you tomorrow.